Hello and welcome to Spelunking of Death and You. This is part of an ongoing series of deep dives into various aspects of the board game Kingdom Death Monster. This video we are looking at the gear and secret fighting art that come when you are battling and fighting the Lion God. The Lion God is a Lantern Year 13 monster that is now designated as a Node 4 along with the Dung Beetle Knight and the King. It's no slouch at all. It's debatable whether the Lion God or the Dung Beetle Knight is the more dangerous of the two monsters that were released in the first generation of monsters. The Lion God's definitely more dangerous at level 1 and level 2. There's an argument for level 3 where the Dung Beetle Knight turbocharges itself to an incredibly terrifying level. But I think on the whole the Lion God is tougher because it's, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about this here. So it's about risk versus reward or stick versus carrot. So it's absolutely fine for a monster to be difficult and challenging and hard and a tough puzzle to crack. That's great. It is why we keep growing our survivors and keep improving our play so we can tackle more and more difficult challenges and questions being asked of us. The King and the Dung Beetle Knight both adequately demonstrated that just because a monster is punishing and hard doesn't mean it isn't good. The Lion God has a problem where the risk portion is hugely skewed and the reward is not great. We're going to go through all of the pieces of gear here, and I'll give you my opinions, recommendations near the end, but as a spoiler, a lot of this stuff isn't either quite good enough for how difficult the monster is, or it's very limited in what you can do with it. It doesn't mean it's all bad. We're going to explore the best things we can do with this stuff. But before we go any further, I would like to actually take a look at the biggest example I can show you of why I say the stick is just too much in the Lion God. This is a basic action card from the Lion God, and it is called Earthquake. Now, this is we don't worry about Relentless. Relentless is a mechanic that the Lion God gained when it was taken from the Dung Beetle Knight during development, but it is a basic card, so you can face this against any of the various different Lion Gods. It picks target, closest survivor in field of view. Okay, so basically any survivor, unless they're behind terrain or... It doesn't matter if you're a threat or not, otherwise it's going to target you. You get a flow step, that's helpful. And then it full moves towards the target, a crack widens in the earth before the Lion God. All survivors, everyone, loses 1 survival and suffers monster level brain damage. Any survivors in the seismic zone are consumed by fire and die instantly, and you archive all terrain tiles in the seismic zone. We can see the seismic zone is every single space in the 3 columns or rows that is directly in front of the Lion God, reaching from the Lion God all the way to the edge of the board. So this is an instant death area that just goes and goes and goes. If you get targeted by this, and the Lion God starts, I believe, at 8 movement, we'll confirm that in a moment when we look at the rewards, you can't avoid this. Dashing won't do the job. Hiding behind terrain won't do the job. The only way to survive this is to manage to dash and be in a position exactly where the Lion God will end up with you being on either this corner or this corner, because then it's targeting, it can't get you. That is the only way. Otherwise, you're just dead. This is frankly, and I do not say this often, really badly designed AI card. You just don't have the counterplay against it. If it was like any survivors in the seismic zone must spend all of their survival at least 1 or die instantly, we'd have a different discussion. It would be really punishing, but it at least would be handleable. And as it stands, this is nuts. And I'll tell you, with Relentless, this thing comes up more often if it's in the deck than you would expect. This is a way overtuned card that is just unfair in how it behaves. It is that old classic rocks fall and you die design that gets into some of the mechanics in the game and kind of holds the rest back from being as good as it could be. So this card in particular needs addressing and hopefully gets changed in Campaigns of Death or the Silver City, because this is like deja vu. This is one of those cards you can lose down the back of your sofa and it will just make your game better. So that is why the stick is so high with the Lion God, because it has stuff like that. It doesn't get as bad as Earthquake most of the time, but it is a really, really dangerous monster. So let's now take a little look-see at the rewards. When you defeat the Lion God, you'll gain this Knowledge Worm Innovation if you don't have it already, or a Necromancer. We'll look at that in a moment. And then you will get your rewards. Will be the Necromancer's Eye rare gear, the Golden Plate rare gear, the Lion God Statue rare gear, and then you get a load of basic resources, Iron Strange resources, and of course the Black Lichen Indomitable kind of thing. There's an extra bonus if you have Memento Mori, which is, it's fine, it's whatever. But we'll look at these three pieces of gear right after we look at the Necromancer Worm, Knowledge Worm and Necromancer. So let's get to let's put this down so I don't have to look at it. Here's the Knowledge Worm. So at the start of each settlement phase, you add 1 scrap to the settlement storage. So it's a minor resource generator. It produces a little bit of scrap. Every 3 scrap can be a piece of iron. That's nice. Departing survivors gain +3 survival and +3 insanity. If any of those survivors have 10+ insanity, you go to the event A Gracious Host, which is just here. There we are. Right, so somebody's going to have to ingest this worm. It's the survivor with the highest insanity, and remember they also already have triggered it by having like 10+ insanity. You have to roll on this table. On a 1 to 2, you die, and you get 2 Broken Lantern resources into settlement storage. This is really bad because this is your departing survivor dies. So that means you are going out to the hunt 1 survivor down. That's always a really, really bad situation. It's terrible when it happens on the hunt. It's absolutely awful when it happens here. That makes the Knowledge Worm super dangerous for settlement survivors without lifetime rerolls. On a 3, 4, 5, or 6, you just kind of don't do anything. You can pull away from it. If you have 4, 5, or 6 and sacrifice, then you will go to Death's Embrace. And this is the good thing. Basically, you eat the Knowledge Worm, and it worms its way down inside you and transforms you into a pseudo version of the Lion God, because the Knowledge Worm is the parasite that infected the Lion God and has kind of messed it up and ruined it. You will lose the Knowledge Worm and you get the Necromancer Secret Fighting Art, which is this card here. Right, so whenever you depart, you'll gain +1 armor or hit location for each gear card in your grid with a symbol keyword. There's a bunch of cards with the symbol keyword. A lot of them come in this expansion, so you're rewarded for trying to collect those. We'll look at them in a bit. It's worth noting that most of them are Mehendis, and there are 2 very notable Mehendis that do not have the symbol word at this time. It's Boss Mehendi and the Glue Mehendi from the Slender Man. These need to be changed, in my opinion. They are symbols, painted, tattooed on, painted on, however it's done. So that really should be updated, but it hasn't happened yet. Hopefully Campaigns of Death, next update pack fixes it. Otherwise, to be brutally honest, I do think you should consider them to have the symbol keyword. It's not a big boost to it, but, we're not here to talk about house rules. It's just something I feel is omitted, and did want to mention you can work around it if you want, and it's kind of nice to have the Boss Mehendi do something. Alright, whenever you roll on severe injury table, you have to roll on the worm trauma table on the other side of this card, and if you die or forget this, you will get the Knowledge Worm back because the worm crawls back out of your remains. We'll flip this over. It is whenever you suffer an unspecified severe injury, so that's anything where, if it says like suffer blind, then that's a specified severe injury, but otherwise you roll on this table, you'll notice you've got a higher chance of dying than normal on 1 to 3, but a lot of the rest of the stuff just hits you with bleeding and bleeding tokens and negative tokens. It can even generate iron. So this is like an interesting thing to have. It's quite dangerous given the increased chance of death. so you do want a lot of armor points of protection to avoid you getting through it. And you're not rolling on the severe injury table, you're rolling on the worm trauma table, so unless we get any clarification further, anything that works on severe injuries isn't going to work here, because they're not severe injuries, by my understanding. Anyway, the Necromancer is one of the most fun things to play around with. It is a whole build in itself, but unfortunately it's missing a lot of the pieces it needs. It's super cool to have the concept of this character wearing, like, instead of fighting wearing armour, they don a bunch of symbols upon themselves instead and become quite tough as a consequence of that. But it doesn't really do much else except give you an alternate way of getting armor points, so everything utility-wise tends to have to come from the symbols. So that's the Knowledge Worm and the Necromancer. It's cool, it's interesting, it's also really scary to deal with. You are gambling on a higher chance of dying for a moderate benefit. But, you know, it's difficult to trigger this unless you're really willing to go for it. You have to be Insanity 10 plus when departing, so that means you've made the decision to risk this, so I think it's all a fine risk. Okay, let's look at the 3 pieces of gear that come from leveling. Here they are. Whoop, I'll flip the deck over for no reason. There we go. I want to view it, please. There we are. Right, okay. So first up we have the Necromancer's Eye. This is a item set jewelry other. It's got a down facing blue affinity and it wants that connected for its puzzle ability. It gives you 2 armor to the head location. It is unique, 1 per settlement. It is an accessory, so fantastic. That means you can still wear armor and this will sit on top of it and give you a couple of extra points of armor. It allows you to ignore the effects of blind. So if you've got a survivor who's lost 1 or even both eyes, they can wear the Necromancer's Eye and function normally. Very helpful. Blind is a relatively common injury at in most settlements because of See the Truth inflicting it, and if you don't have Dridecanthus to negate that severe injury when it's triggered, it's kind of common. It happens. You've got to suck it up. But the really big thing this does is once the puzzle affinity ability is connected and active, you can use it with your activation to reveal the next 4 monster hit locations and put them back in any order. So given that the Lion God is the god of the White Lions, the White Lion people of the Silver City, it's unsurprising that you can get a turbo version of that from here with the Necromancer's Eye. I kind of think this should have been given the symbol keyword because it is the Necromancer's Eye. It would have been cool if it had the extra synergy with the Necromancer, but it doesn't need it. This is a slightly better Cat Eye Circlet, and a really big thing to note about this is the difference from 3 to 4 is actually quite significant. When you're scouting 3 cards, that's usually 1.5 survivors attacks or a survivor plus a slow survivor. Suddenly the Necromancer's Eye is now 1 activation's covering the full attacks of 2 2-speed survivors, or heck, a 2-speed survivor and 2 1-speed survivors. It's a significant breakpoint and it's doing a lot. This makes the level 1 Lion God a worthy thing to hunt after because it is a good reward for the level. This is a really good item and I'm super happy with it, and that's why I'd rather not run into Earthquake, but I'll risk it for this, plus the Knowledge Worm at level 1 once in a campaign is a pretty beneficial thing to do, if still you need to be geared to the 9s. Then we have our level 2. This is the Golden Plate. So this is a item metal heavy. It has 4 affinities, up, down, left and right, all red. It is unique again. It gives you -1 evasion, and if you have 4 red affinities in your gear grid, then when you depart you gain +2 armor to all locations wearing fur armor. So this is part of the Lion God White Lion Armor synergy package. We'll take a look at that near the end, but the main thing to note here is that you can actually technically use this with Screaming Armor as well. It can be tough to get to enough of those affinities though. But this is a genuinely quite good piece of gear because The -1 evasion, you might be looking at going, oh, but why would I'm getting more armor, but I'm losing evasion? That's not what I want. But the thing is, damage dealing survivors like White Lion armor survivors, they're not seeking to dodge hits. They're not even really seeking to take hits. They just want their armor points for reactions, running into the trap, and the odd occasion where they accidentally get targeted or incidental damage. So additional armor points is quite useful, and this here is offering a lot of extra armor points, 10 armor points, which can help White Lion armor a great deal. The trouble is, you've got to kill a level 2 White Lion to get this, and if you can do that, you're probably not using White Lion armor anyway. The second issue, and we'll see this with the other 2 White Lion armor related pieces of gear, is it's another slot in your gear grid. Gear grids only have 9 slots. Your first 5 slots are typically, but not always, devoted to armor. Your 6th slot is usually devoted to a weapon, so you've only got 3 slots generally to play around with for items. This is now turning your White Lion armor set into a 6 armor set, and we're going to even see another piece to turn it into a 7 slot armor set. And the next item technically is also there to try and help, and that could make it like mind-boggling 8 slot armor set, which is way too many slots for what you get. So let's have a look at it. This is the Lion God statue. This is our level 3 reward. It is an item stone heavy with an up facing blue and a left facing red puzzle. It's unique and it gives you -1 evasion again. Obviously it's a heavy little statue. Its puzzle ability, if you connect the red, is gain personal strength for each red you have. Now this can be a lot of strength, which is great, okay? But you've killed a level 3 Lion God, and what you've got from this is some black lichen and some iron and some basic resources, whatever you got from Spelunking of Death, and this. I expect more for fighting what is a really dangerous monster. But we will have a look at the White Lion whole setup and rig after we've been through the Spelunking of Death rewards and the whole thing there. Okay, so that's all of the level up gear that you get from the Lion God. It's interesting. It has some uses. It's just competing with a lot of other gear. It's your sort of decision. I generally think these are not quite good enough for how difficult the monsters you're facing are. But that's not the only stuff you get. We also have the Sinkhole, which will lead to, I'll get it ready down there, this event down here. So, Necropolis. Right, the Sinkhole is a terrain that will be in your deck, and it can turn up in any showdown. If it turns up in any showdown, it's just a space where if you land on this, if you end your movement on this Sinkhole, you die. So it becomes a piece of terrain that you have to be very cognizant of and try and avoid getting knocked back into, because it'll kill you. It's also set up next to the monster, so it's right in the middle of the showdown, so it's always a thing that you're having to play around, and generally you have to pull the monster away from this. Now, when fighting the Lion God, it doesn't start on the board. Instead, the Lion God loves to smash up bits of terrain in its sorrow and grief and rage, and it will pick up pillars and start hitting survivors with them. It's super fun, really thematic and cool. Well, first time it does that, it reveals the Sinkhole. Within that showdown then, you can now activate the Plunge into Depths ability, which you gain a survival, you get to Necropolis, you use it once per survivor per showdown, so a maximum of 4 times you can do this in showdown, and another survivor also has to be adjacent to the Sinkhole. So this adds an extra bit of pressure to the showdown where you're trying to get into the Sinkhole in order to get the rewards. So we will look at the Necropolis event itself, which is right here. So you start at the ventilation shaft and you get out via escape or you die. Now the interesting thing about this is it feels very similar to mineral gathering, which I like. It's nice to see them parallel together. But this is going down into what appears to be the Silver City, City of the Dead. So, on the very top section, which is the first one you roll in, You'll see on a 1, 2, or 3 you get trapped in a pit. If that happens to you, the survivor adjacent to the sinkhole has to spend a survival to save you. If they can't do that, then you're dead. So you want the other survivors to have some survival to help out. On a 4, 5, or 6, you escape, so you leave. But if you have 8+ hunt XP, you'll go down into the Grand Gallery because you're experienced. So again, we can see now we want an 8+ hunt XP survivor to do this. On an 8+, you get the old blue box strange resource. We'll look at that after we've been through this. And you go down to the Grand Gallery as well. So the Grand Gallery is the next layer down. 1 or 2 now, you get trapped in a pit, same as before. 3, 4, 5, you'll go back up to the ventilation shaft, which you can then go back down from again. 6, 7, 8, and 9. You'll get the triptych, and if the Lion God is level 2 or higher, you go to the catacombs, otherwise you escape. So this is the cap here of our level 1 explorations. We know once we have the old blue box and we have the triptych, there's no point doing anything more against the level 1. Against the level 2 or higher, we'll go down to the catacombs on these higher rolls. 1, 2, 3, 4 to 6, you get trapped in a pit. But if you're insane when that happens, you also get the Canoptic Jar, strange resource. On a 7+, you'll gain the Silver Urn, and if the Lion God is a 3+, you get to go to the God's Chamber. Otherwise, you escape. In the God's Chamber then, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you'll get a piece of iron, and you can either escape or you can take a brain trauma to roll again on the table. Not bad if you're an Accept Darkness Accept Darkness settlement, because you're less likely to die from brain trauma. On a 6+, you will get the sarcophagus and escape. So as we can see, level 1, old blue box, triptych, boom. Level 2, we can get both of those, plus we can get the Canoptic Jar. And then against the level 3, we can get the sarcophagus potentially. So that gives us a tier list of how powerful these items roughly should be. These are the pieces of gear, the strange resources you get. Each one of them has their own kind of little things. Worth noting in here, like -2 movement when you have the sarcophagus. This one removes 2 bleeding tokens from you, which is nice. And this one gives you some insanity. Otherwise, these become an option once you have them in the settlement to archive and do death reading, which we will look at, and then we'll look at the gear. So, death reading is a settlement event, story event. Here it is. Now, the big thing to note is you nominate a survivor and you follow the instructions on each section based on the piece of the resource, the strange resource that you're interacting with. Necromancers can choose their result without rolling. Use a Necromancer if you have one, because these rolls are generally, are you going to die or are you going to succeed? So, use a Necromancer. Otherwise, in some cases, use a disposable survivor, because these will often kill you if you fail the roll. Okay, so first of all, the old blue box. You get the ancient lion claw gear no matter what, and then you have to roll the dice, and on a 1, 2, or 3 you die. Otherwise, you get to comprehend the smoke, and you also gain the Lanternmend. Then the next one is the triptych. Big fan of triptychs, by the way. I love how they look. Nothing for the start, but on 3+, you trace branches and you survive, otherwise you just die. When tracing branches, you gain the Glyph of Solitude. Each one of these is referencing bits of lore of the world. The Comprehend the Smoke is a little bit of the past of the White Lions, or the White Lion people. This is the Lonely Tree. We can tell by the picture, but also mechanically it works just like the Lonely Tree, in that the Lonely Tree likes to lure its victims to sleep under its branches and then devours them and spits out eventually some remains of them as fruit to lure new victims in. Canoptic Jar. Right, so again, 4+, see red, otherwise you die from your blood boiling. Nice, not. You'll get the Butcher's Blood, so we can see the Canoptic Jar is relating to the Butcher. The sarcophagus has this enormous mummified lion head, So this is a big part of why it is kind of postulated that the Silver City was inhabited by humanoid lion people like the Thundercats. That and Thundercats is about the right time period for Adam, and Adam's been influenced a lot by stuff from his childhood and teenage years. I kind of think this is a Lion-O here, but even if not, it's clear that the people of the Silver City venerated lions a huge amount. But I subscribe to the opinion that the white lions are a degenerated form of the people of the Silver City. We'll see if that holds up when the Silver City comes out in the future. Be interesting. Anyway, you get the Death Mehendi from this, which is a pretty interesting piece of gear. Finally, we have the Silver Urn down here. It will hit you with blind twice if you fail the roll, but on a 3+, otherwise you invite the dust in and you gain the Bone Witch Mehendi. So I'm not going to read all the text on these because there's some nice little bits of lore building that either you've read yourself while I've been talking, or you can read at some time in the future. What we're going to do now is look at the pieces of gear and in order. Right, so we will start with the Ancient Lion Claws. This is the other piece of gear I was referencing in as being something to try and upgrade White Lion armor. It's a unique accessory. Again, it reduces your evasion by 1. It gives you 2 armor points onto the arms, so it's worn in addition. It gives you +2 strength while attacking with daggers or guitars, which is a nice bonus. It allows you to move 2 additional spaces when you pounce. Pounce being the White Lion ability, but it is set on the White Lion coat rather than being a part of the armor set. This is obviously a nice bonus. +2 strength onto a weapon is nothing to sneeze at. That's generally an entire monster level step up, apart from the very big jumps that sometimes go from level 2 to level 3. The extra spaces on Pounce is also really good. Pounce being only 3 spaces is a bit tricky to handle. We just have the same issue that I was discussing in respect to the breastplate. It's another slot. Even though you've technically gotten this for just 1 resource, and it's a great return, and it's a great piece of world building, and it has an up and a right red facing red affinities, up and right red affinity. It's just so hard to fit everything on there, and suddenly we'll take a look at the gear, as I said, but at least you can get this from the level 1, which is a nice benefit, and that's another part of the reason I say hunting the level 1's pretty much worth it. It does help White Lion armor for sure, but I think White Lion armor could have done with a hybrid, armor set card in the Lion God expansion that used the Ancient Lion Claws and used the Ancient Breastplate and gave you this different set bonus that had Pounce built into it, and you could just have the Lion Claws and the Breastplate instead of the normal White Lion pieces. So to keep the armor set together as a set, but let you upgrade it by just changing a couple of pieces, would have been really sweet. Again, we'll have to see in the future, but I'll take a look and we'll discuss what it's like now in a short bit. Next we have the Lanternmend. So this is an item soluble symbol other. It just has a red affinity on it. It also has a down facing blue affinity, and its puzzle ability is red and puzzle blue. You may start the showdown in any unoccupied board space. So Necromancer synergy, that's the first thing to think about. Second thing is this is a red affinity for you. If you need a red affinity, it's providing one, and it's providing half of a blue affinity. That's nice. And starting the showdown in any unoccupied board space is actually kind of really useful. Movement positioning is a big, powerful thing in any kind of square-based tactical combat game or hex-based. Being in the right place at the right time matters, and this thing lets you start in the right place, so that's fantastic. It doesn't do any builds by itself, it just kind of supports things, and it's a bit of glue that will be useful and has a powerful ability all by itself, so it's nice to get, and again you get it from the level 1, which is great. And we have the Glyph of Solitude, item soluble symbol other, also has again this red affinity it gives to you. It has a right and down facing green affinity with red and one of the puzzle greens. It gives you +2 accuracy, you're deaf and you cannot encourage. Obviously those two things, quite a loss. Less so if you're playing people with the Dreamkeeper, because they can fist pump to do the equivalent of an encourage. This +2 accuracy though is really nice, and the fact that it is giving you a red affinity on your gear grid and providing two nicely positioned green affinities that can be quite useful means this is another good piece of gear, on top of it having a fantastic synergy with the Necromancer as well. So definitely good for a damage dealing type of survivor, and they can concentrate then on spending their survival for attacking and positioning. Other people will just have to cover the encourage situation. Very, very, very good again. Right, then we have the Butcher's Blood. Item soluble symbol other, has a blue affinity for itself this time. Up facing red, left facing red, with blue and a puzzle red. For every 10 insanity you have, you gain +1 speed and +1 strength. So currently there's a number of ways to get a stupid amount of insanity. The Gorm Hiccup, the level 3, was it level 4? The Legendary Phoenix, and the Butcher. The normal Butcher, you can actually create a loop where all it does is menace you over and over and pile up your insanity more and more, and then you get him with a bow when you're ready. But it's extra speed and extra strength is really good, and used in moderation, this is a potent tool for a damage dealing type of survivor. As a little aside, and a story and history of Kingdom Death, this is the reason that the counterweighted axe changed from 1.5 to 1.6. See, while I was messing around with the Butcher's Blood and trying to figure out how to utilise it best, I hit upon using it with the counterweighted axe, because the earlier counterweighted axe, every perfect hit just scored an automatic wound. It skipped the hit location deck, just dealt the wound. That meant now 10% of attacks would just boom, like automatically score a wound. Because of stupid ways of getting tons of insanity, like the Golden-Eyed God or Hiccup exploiting, you could have, let's just say with the Golden God, 1,000 insanity. That's plus 100 speed. Add Timeless Eye onto that, and 20% of those are converting into automatic wounds. So that's 20 wounds to a monster in a single attack, and that is just a, we've killed the Golden-Eyed God. That's not even considering the technically unlimited amount of insanity you can get via Hiccup. So when we were providing feedback to Team Death, Adam, about these various different things, this is one thing that was highlighted with basically, you do this and this, and you can walk up to the Gold Smoke Knight and it just dies. And it would, first attack, it's dead. Yeah, mathematically dead. It was one of two really broken things. The other one is the Red Ring of Death that I talk about in the Spidiculous video, at Silk Mill in You. This is the other one. Now, thankfully, the counterweighted axe got changed to trigger once per attack, and the Butcher's Blood fell back to being just kind of hovering in the background. It might raise its head again. Any time that we get a way of converting speed into automatic wounds, bypassing the hit location deck, thereby not worrying about the trap, this is lurking there to do stuff. So, because it's a horrendously broken ability, as long as the balancing mechanic of the trap is not something you need to worry about. Outside of that, super thematic. You can wear it with Imitation Butcher's armour, you can wield cleavers, you can use the new Killennium Butcher Cleaver Mastery, and you can be your own little cosplay Butcher and have a really fun time. I love what Butcher's Blood does a great deal. It is just terrifying how easily it can break the game. if they're not careful with the mechanics. But the truth is, that's not the fault of Butcher's Blood. That's the fault of automatic wounds. Whenever you have a system that has a balancing mechanic that is intended to punish players for hitting and failing, if you have a way of bypassing and you get to hit and just skip the punishment and it can't touch you, you start to distort the game. Death Mehendi is next. Right, so this is item soluble symbol other. It's cursed, so whoever you put it on, it's on them. It is a blue, green and red affinity for you. On a perfect hit, you gain plus 1d10 insanity. You suffer -4 to all brain trauma rolls, so you're very likely to be killed by brain trauma. This is a super sweet piece of gear for helping stuff happen, but usually you're going to put this on your Necromancer because they benefit the most from it. Whoever you tie it on, they're getting it. Anyone who benefits from various different extra affinities, people of the stars, they can. This is really sweet and helpful for them. The insanity gain, obviously, you could just look on that and go perfect hits, Butcher's Blood, boom boom, gradually ramp up my insanity, etc. There's all sorts of different things you can do with this. It doesn't cause builds by itself, but it can be that piece of glue. You can be like, oh, I just need one more green affinity or one more blue affinity, and on a given survivor, like an extra blue affinity for a spear survivor. This has got you covered. Boom, here you go. That's kind of interesting. Thematically, I think it is really cool and super interesting. I love the artwork as well. It's just it's a fun piece of gear. I don't think it's good enough for how far down inside the Necropolis it is, but I'm glad it exists. Finally, our last symbol is the Bone Witch Mehendi. Item soluble symbol other, like all of the rest. Up facing blue, left facing green, right facing red. These are all nice affinities. If you have them all connected, then at the start of your act you may spend 3 insanity to gain a survival, or 1 survival to gain 3 insanity. So we can see, if we go back, we can see there's like synergy between all of these for getting like extra insanity. They're spent turning that into survival, get extra speed. This conversion ability is really nice. Insanity into survival or survival into insanity is super helpful, even at this exchange rate of 3-to-1. So a great item here, and a lot of fun, and really good for builds that want to spend survival to do things, which is like the silk boots, you know. There's some interesting silly things you can do with silk boots, blah blah blah, but mostly this is nice to help with sentient gear, because it'll just get you back to that 3 insanity if you dip below it at the cost of 1 survival. So a useful utility item, doesn't really form any builds by itself most of the time, but can help because it's doing something unique and unusual, which isn't commonly available. Okay, that's all the gear cards. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab these 2 cards here, and we're going to grab this card, and let's go and take a look at the white line armor situation. So I've got a few different cards here. Let's move these out so we can see them all. So I've included here as well for reference the Lion Slayer cape from the White Giga Lion. This gives all survivors +1 survival on arrival. If you're wearing fur armor, you reduce all damage suffered by 1 to a minimum of 1. Very good accessory. And the Long Claw, because these are all kind of parts of the same thing, they have a baked in synergy with what's going on. And this here is sort of your typical layout you might go for. You would put the cape maybe here or here, but probably here because you need something else for this. And this is a relatively functional gear grid, as long as you can fit stuff into here. If we start adding these other bits in, we can already see right at the start we can't get everything on because we've got 10 items and we've only got 9 slots. We have to make a compromise somewhere. Our white line armor and our weapon is non-negotiable. It might not be the Long Claw, it may be something else, but it needs to be there. So Lion Slayer cape is kind of fighting with these others. But if we take the cape away and we move this away, let's have a little look at what we can do with all of these. So We'll start, we got the golden plate. So the golden plate is a nice sort of centerpiece. It fits everything together really nicely there. And we can put our ancient lion claws here, and then we can put our lion god statue. We can put it here, but we're now having a problem with this. We can always move the white gauntlet anywhere it needs, and the coat isn't necessarily required either. This is kind of the big issue that sort of starts to happen, is as you move everything around and you try and figure out where you're going to be fitting all of the bits and pieces, it becomes quite apparent that stuff just isn't clicking in as you would like it to. And generally, when I'm doing this stuff, I kind of find I have to sacrifice getting access to the White Lion Helm and the it's just like tough luck, but we can already see, like, if we just move this to here and move this to here and then we put this here, this is a fairly, that's kind of as good as one can get. I could spend more time refining this further, but we can already see a couple of issues. First of all, we don't have our long claw active. We do have 1, 2, 3, 4 extra strength from our lion god statue, and an extra 2 strength here, so the long claw is a very effective weapon, but we can already see we need to fix this further and get things sorted more. So that isn't really a great viable idea. We're going to need to do this, really. That allows us to put this down here, and then we're sort of juggling a bit to try and fit all this. We put this here, we put this here, and then we just kind of stick this in this corner. Actually, do it slightly better, like so. There we are. So this is a better layout that we've managed to put together. Again, we don't have the cape involved in the whole thing. But yeah, this is, I think this one is as good as it gets, really. We have no choice on this. We have no choice on this. This gives us active White Lion boots. It gives us +5 strength, +2 strength here, and it gives us 5 armor points on all locations. It's really sad we can't get the Lion Slayer cape in here, but my biggest issue with all this is we've done a huge amount of work to create an armor set that requires 8 slots to function. Doesn't provide, this utility here, the extra strength or gains of insanity. Doesn't have any resource generating tools, doesn't have anything to help protect itself on the hunt. It's basically you're all in, and you're even having to fight one-handed, like you can't wield dual weapons. And I've probably put one of the best katars possible on here because of how it fits into all of this. There is the option to play a little bit differently. We do have capability to swap the helm and boots around if you wanted to, but I honestly think losing this movement is pretty bad, and you also lose a point of strength, so it's not ideal. And we've lost the Lion Slayer cape, which I think is possibly better than the Lion God statue. So yeah, that's kind of it. It's trying to fix something that is really needs a lot of revisional work, but we've been beating this drum since 1.31, like the original KDM release. With White Lion armor just not being quite up to standard. It's behind every single other Node 1 monster armor set, and that is a shame considering it is iconic, it looks gorgeous, and it should at least be able to hang around until you are getting towards Phoenix armor and all that kind of stuff. But it just can't. It just doesn't quite have enough armor points. Its affinities just aren't quite good enough. And even if we go to the incredible length of killing the level 1 and level 2 Lion God, level 3 even as well if we want this statue, I guess we can always do this. But now we still have our 4 red affinities that we need. It's a lot. It's a lot of pieces of gear for one survivor's loadout, and katars, they're okay as an offensive weapon. They're very good when you got like the long claw, but this is so much work against a Node 4 monster. And if you compare it to what you could get from the Dung Beetle Knight or what you could get from the King, it doesn't really hold up as well. So I think all of this is ripe for some extra looking at. We shouldn't have to be buying a Vignette of Death and a white box promotional additional survivor in order to properly utilise the gear from the Lion God expansion. It's a bit of a shame. I also hope you've enjoyed seeing a little bit of how I kind of you fiddle around with the gear grids. I don't remember all the gear grids layouts off the top of my head, so it's always that fun of sliding things around, and you can see that the first configuration I had the armour in was okay, but the second configuration was significantly better. So we are going to, hopefully, if I get round to it, take a fair bit of a dive into piecing together and constructing gear grids and what kind of things you should be thinking about in a different series, but I'm going to get all of this gear stuff finished first. Anyway, let's put a bow on this, let's wrap it up. We're approaching 50 minutes on the recording, so final opinions. I think it is perfectly reasonable to hunt a level 1 Lion God at least once in a campaign. You get the Knowledge Worm, you get the Necromancer's Eye, you get the Necromancer Secret Fighting Art, you get the Lanternmend, and you get potentially the Ancient Lion Claws as well. That's a nice, decent set of rewards on top of getting 8 basic resources and an iron. That's a reasonable risk reward. The level 2 is a Herald step up. It doesn't get more legendaries, but it increases the chance of having Earthquake by quite a lot. That's a bit more of a question mark, but if you do want to do this, you've got to do it because you need the golden plate. You need this breastplate. The level 3, on the other hand, I think is completely out of whack. It's got 21 toughness, it's got +3 damage, and it has 10 movement, so it's really hard to handle, along with a ton of other things. So that's kind of there for the players who are really, you've got a lot of mileage under your belt, and you are very comfortable and confident with what you're doing. I don't think the rewards are great. So beyond that little bit of the extra iron, and maybe you are looking for that Lion God statue. Who knows? So anyway, that is it. That is the Lion God stuff. We'll come back to the Lion God in the future with a breakdown of its showdown and all its little tricks and eccentricities and how you would approach fighting it. It is still a challenging and can be fun showdown fight when it's not really just taking the mick. I love the model as well, by the way. Fantastic model. I love the character, and I love the Silver City. All of that, like the theming side of this monster, is amazing. I just would like to see the showdown tuned a bit further, and the gear tuned and scaled a bit more. I really, really wish the Lion God had its own resource deck, and you could craft stuff from it. And as I said before, I wish we had a hybrid armor set. Let's actually very quickly explain. I would really like it if we didn't have this, and we didn't have this, and then this would be our arm piece, and this would be our center body piece, and we could just get Pounce via an alternate set, our armor set bonus. And this could be Ancient White Lion armor. I'd love that so much, and I really hope we do see it, because as much as I am known for ragging on White Lion armor, I do it because I want this armor to be better. I really, really like this armor a huge amount, and it is frustrating to know that when I am using it, I am effectively kind of nerfing myself, which is okay, but it sucks. It shouldn't be like this. So, hashtag, make White Lion armor wonderful. Anyway, if you are out in the darkness, hunting a gigantic worm-infested sphinx, dressed as a little kitty cat, and you hear some meowing in the distance, well, good luck and happy hunting.